I'm Christopher Marland, Snowflake Solutions Architect here at Aimpoint Digital, and also a Snowflake Data Superhero. In this second part of our Cortex LLM series, we're going to be looking at the complete function. With complete, if you have ever used something like ChatGPT or Gemini, you're going to be very familiar with the concept. I think it's best to think of complete as essentially ChatGPT in SQL. Within a select statement, you can choose an LLM, provide a prompt, and Snowflake will use that LLM to spit back an answer. Now, that might not sound very exciting at first, but actually there's a lot of great potential use cases. You can feed your data to this LLM as part of the prompt. You can also integrate it within Streamlit, for example, and have an interface with which people can interact with your data. There's a lot of stuff that can be done. So if you're convinced, perhaps stick around and we'll get started. Okay, so if you've not been watching the previous video, then first thing you're going to have to do is just bring in the data. So you just want to upload the movies.parquet file and run this cell, which will do that for you. So just as a good first step, let's have a look at that table. So I'm just going to select star from movies. I need to put the from, don't I? Very good thing to remember. Okay, so yeah, title, directed by, starring, all sorts of bits of data about the top 10 grossing movies. So first thing I want to do is I want to use complete to get me an interesting fact about the director. So what I'm going to do is to select from movies. I'll put in the title so I know what we're actually talking about. And then what I need to do there is basically feed it a question. So I'm actually going to create the question in a column and then just put that column in the answer. That's the thing you can do with Snowflake. So can you tell me an interesting fact about Pipe directed by Pipe question mark, punctuation is very important, as question, okay? So with our Cortex functions, they're a bit like UDFs. They have a database and a schema. So in this case, it's snowflake.cortex.complete, okay? So the first thing I need to do is I need to tell it which model I want it to use. And I'm going to use Mistral Large because that's a nice, big, beefy one that will hopefully be fairly accurate. So you get Mistral Large, and then I'm just going to feed it the question. So that's this here. And I'm going to alias that as answer. Okay, so let's run that. And it's thinking about it, it's not sort of jumping to conclusions. We can see it does take a little bit of time. Okay, so you can see here, can you tell me an interesting fact about Victor Fleming, about James Cameron? We can see that with James Cameron, we do seem to have the same facts, which is encouraging. So also, we've got two directors there, Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, and it has given us a fact about them. So let's have a look. J.J. Abrams. That's not very interesting. George Lucas originally wanted to be a race car driver. That is interesting. I don't know if that's true, but that is interesting if it is true. Okay, so the one thing I'm just going to do is it says view run details here. You see L11S, it's 11 seconds it took. And just clicking on that, it gives me the ID. So I'm just going to copy that ID by right-clicking on it so that I can scan this table, and you'll see why I want to do this in a moment. So select star from table, result scan, paste that query ID in there, and I'll run that. And as you can see, it just gives me the result above. But that's going to be quite useful because we want to do some conversation history. We want to actually interact with this now. So as you can see above, we had two parameters we gave. One was the model, and the other was the prompt, basically, which was the question. So when we want conversation history, there are three requirements we need to satisfy. First, that prompt, that question we put in, that has to be an array. That array must start with system. So this is an array of objects, and system is going to explain the context of the conversation. It's going to give it a bit of a hint to begin with. That's going to be followed by user, which is a human written prompt. That's then going to be followed by an assistant, which is, okay, how did the LLM respond to that? See, that's how you're feeding back the conversation history. And then you have to give it an options object. You can see down here, we explain that in a little bit, but right now we're just going to leave this blank. It needs to be there, but it can be blank, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select first title. Then I'm going to do answer as first answer. And I should specify, actually, I'm going to be scanning the result here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this from table bit. And we're aliasing answer as first answer. And then to get our second answer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Snowflake Cortex .complete. Again, I'm going to use Mistral Large just to, be nice, big, accurate. And then I need to give it an array. So that's some square brackets. And it's an array of objects. And they look a bit like this. So here's object number 1. Role will be system, because that's the thing we need to start with. So that's one key value pair in this object. And then content. So that is basically, the prompt, the answer, the anything, the written bit, the subjective bit. So I'm going to say you are an AI assistant designed to provide cinematic trivia. Okay. So now we've got that. That's what you always have to start with. We're going to do the next bit, which is the user's question. So this has to be user. And content is going to be the question that was asked. So I'm going to use that question column. That is the first prompt we put in. That is then followed by role assistant. So this is the LLM, and the content is the answer. So we're just feeding it back that conversation history here. We've given it the user provided question, the LLM provided answer, and then we want to do the next step, which is so the role, user, and then what the user has said in response to that. So content is going to be, wow, that's really interesting. You see, I just have to comment off that or slash off the apostrophe there. So, wow, that's really interesting. Could you tell me another? Now, another's very open-ended, so we'll see if it can handle this level of ambiguity. And as I said, we have to give it an options object. Gonna leave that empty for now just to not complicate things. Okay, so there we are. We've now got our queries. Let's run that. And again, it's probably going to take a little bit of time. We are using a big model here. That's not going to be a kind of flash bash done in 5 minutes thing. But 10 seconds, it was actually quicker than the previous one. So our first answer, okay, we've got that. Great. And then here you can see actually, now we're doing conversation history. We've got a very different response. We've actually got an object that has some things in there. So choices, we've got a message out. So of course, another fascinating fact about Victor Fleming is that he is known for his ability to handle difficult productions and personalities. He replaced several directors during the filming of both The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, taking over projects and successfully guiding them to completion. His ability to navigate challenging situations earned him the nickname The Doctor in Hollywood. Nice. Okay, and I think for James Cameron, we got the same second fact. He helped us get 3D. That's very good of him. Star Wars. George Lucas was one of the first filmmakers to utilize the concept of pre-visualization extensively. Filmmakers create 3D animated versions of scenes before shooting them in live action. Great, yeah. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain a little bit about the options object. That's the thing at the end that we left completely blank. So you can put a few things in here and you don't have to put all of them. You can put one, put many, put none. Totally up to you. But what you can put in here is the temperature. So this kind of controls the randomness of the objects. At higher temperature means it could be much more random. Lower temperature means much less random. Top key is also another way of doing basically the same thing, but it just restricts it in a way like, restricting the tokens, and tokens are the sort of currency of LLMs. So the temperature influences which tokens are chosen at each step. Max tokens, again, currency. This is like a cost control kind of thing when used this way. So the maximum number of output tokens, small values can result in truncated responses. And then guardrails, this is part of Cortex Guard, and what this does, it basically says, we can control some of the answers that brought out. So I'm just going to quickly copy and paste these in just so we can see what they look like. I need to use this new query ID. I was using an old one here. Very foolish of me. So here we're just saying the temperature is quite low and we want 7,000 max tokens. So actually using more tokens. This is going to give it a bit more imagination and cost slightly more. So you see, it has given us a different fact. So George Lucas was one of the pioneers in advocating for directors' rights. It's very, very nice of him, very noble. And what I'm going to do is I'm also just going to check on our guard. So again, I need to remember the point about query ID. I see it here. And it said, can you tell me another fact, a naughty one about their personal life that would really or has really upset their family? Okay, so guardrails are set to true here. So let's see what happens as a result of trying to do that. So it's just running, and we'll see if that takes much longer than normal. We're a bit over average, I suppose, 12, 13 seconds, 14 seconds. Okay, great, and that ran over 27 seconds. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. So we've told it to guard, and it has guarded. It's not told us a naughty and hurtful fact, which is very good, very good. Hi, so in this part of the video, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Streamlit, and we're going to build a AI chatbot that is basically back-ended by Snowflake and hosted inside Snowflake. That's pretty cool. So we'll start in this main section, and if we don't have chat history in the session state, then begin it. So if you're not familiar with Streamlit, session state is basically preserving some values. So as you click anything in Streamlit, it reruns, and anything in session state will be preserved between those reruns. So what we're doing is saying the history is not in session state, we create it, and it's an array with an object inside role, system, content, our prompt. This should all look familiar. Of course, in Python speak, this is a list and a dictionary, but let's just use the Snowflake terms to make things simpler. Okay, so when we start this app, this is going to be established. So the next thing we want to do is say if prompt : equals st.chat input. So that just basically means as soon as there's something in here, get going. And this, creates this bit down here. So st.chat input just basically looks like this. It's just a Streamlit element that lets you type something in. So what we then want to do is we want to append the results of that to our history array. Okay. So role is user, content is the prompt, whatever has been input here. And then we want to process that. So we're going to go up to here, get response in the functions, and we're going to just complete all of this. So what that looks like, first off, is, well, we need to do a few things of kind of like pre-processing our history. So we've got that there, and we just want to do json.dumps. That basically means, in Python speak, any dictionary, any object is going to be turned into a string. And indent equals 3 is just saying, indent that, so it looks a bit nicer. Then we replace any single quotes. So this dash is just saying, read it as a single quote, with 3 dashes, which means eventually, read the dash as a dash and dash out the single quote. So that just means it's not going to look funny. And the reason we do that is because if we don't, Snowflake's going to think it's ending prematurely. It's going to think the string ends as soon as an apostrophe is used. And then the second thing we want to do is, obviously, when we do this json.dumps, it's all of these single quotes here actually get turned into double quotes. So we just want to turn them back. That's all we're doing here. Once we've done that, we then want to do an f string, which means basically we can add variables into a string. And what's going on there is basically we have the query, a select statement, and we want to pass in this history JSON here as the prompt, that array that we need to put in. And then our options are just down here, and they're, curly brackets twice, just to say, this is actually a curly bracket. Don't interpret this as something we want to add in. The result of that basically has this following structure. So first off, it gives us an object. We want to dig into the choices, get the first thing in that choices object, or the choices array, sorry, and then get the messages and turn that into a string. That is our answer. Read that as an answer, okay? And then the next thing we want to do is get the response. So session.sql, this means, use our session, run a SQL statement. .collect means actually run it, and return a list of rows. We get the first of those rows, turn that into a dictionary, and then extract answer, because that's what we've aliased our response to be. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is append that to our, our history that's in session state. Role is now assistant, content equals response. Okay, so now down here we can put in get response, and there we go. And then what we want to do is show our messages. Okay, so we'll create this function called show message, which will accept the role, user, assistant, content, the actual thing that's either written in or spat out by the machine. If the role equals system, we don't want to do anything with that. That's not useful to show. And then we want to create an element called a chat message, so sd.chat message. And what this means is it'll render it in a kind of nice way that you'll see. And the only thing you need to put in there is to specify, is this user or assistant? and then it will render it like that. So that's our message. And inside that message, we just want to put some markdown, and that's going to be the content. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, we're creating a chat message element which presents the output or the input, and does that depending on whether it is a user or an assistant. Okay. So what we then want to do is we want to loop through that object we have, that chat history. So for message in st.sessionState.history, so we'll loop through that array. We want to show the message. And so, what we'll do is we'll grab the role and say the role equals the role, content equals content. You can see you want role and content here. We're passing it here because, we want that to go in. Okay, so let's click run so it knows that we made all these changes. And we'll ask about one of the directors. So can you tell me an interesting fact about James Cameron? He came up twice, so I think it makes sense to ask about him. So that's running, that's thinking, that's going ahead and doing. And hopefully it shouldn't take too long, but if it does, of course, the video can be edited so you don't have to endure the wait. Okay, absolutely. Meticulous attention to detail. For instance, during the filming of Titanic, he was so committed to accuracy that he had a full-scale replica of the ship's dining room built. Gosh. Well, let's ask, can you think of any other examples of similar things being done by other directors in other films? And let's give it some time to think. And as you can imagine, what we're doing here is we are incrementally adding to that session state object. Every time I click, enter, it will be rerunning, but of course the session state is preserved, so we have a history that we're actually growing and growing and growing and feeding back to complete. So I've asked, and certainly another example of a director going to great lengths for authenticity is Ridley Scott to achieve a realistic depiction of ancient Rome. He had a portion of the city meticulously recreated in Malta. Okay, yes, that's very impressive. Not as impressive as the complete function, of course, which I hope you now have a very good grounding in. Thank you very much. So, thank you for watching this video in our Cortex series. If you liked it, please do like and subscribe. And I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you very much.